Princess Lirelei stood on the highest balcony of her crystal palace, watching the three moons rise over the dragon realm. The silver light made her long hair shimmer like liquid starlight. Her emerald eyes reflected the ancient power that flowed. Through her veins, she was only 19 years old, but commanded respect from beings across the galaxy. The palace stretched for miles in every direction, built from pure crystal that grew from the planet core itself. It rose into the clouds like a mountain of light. Each tower housed different types of dragons, from the tiny messenger sprites to the massive war beasts that could melt entire cities. The palace was both beautiful and terrifying. A symbol of the Dragon Empire, power tonight felt different from all the others. Princess Lirelei could sense change coming, like the electric feeling before a storm. Her two beloved dragons, Zara and Kale, were restless. They paced around their golden perches, making soft, worried sounds that only she could understand. Zara was magnificent to behold. Her red scales caught the moonlight and threw it back like flames. Her eyes held intelligence that rivaled the greatest scholars in the Empire. She had been with Princess Lirelei since birth, growing from a small creature that fit in her hands to a dragon the size of a large horse. Every scale on her body was perfect. Every movement showed grace and power. Kyle was Zara, twin brother, but completely different. His blue scales were like sapphires that had been polished by master craftsmen. Where Zara was fire, he was ice. Where she was passion, he was calm thought. They balanced each other perfectly, just as they balanced their young mistress. The three of them had never been separated, not even for a single day. The princess turned from the balcony and walked through the palace halls. Her bare feet made no sound on the crystal floors that had been worn smooth by countless generations of dragon royalty. Servants bowed as she passed, but she barely noticed them. Her mind was focused on the meeting that would happen tomorrow. For months, the Dragon Empire had been in conflict with the human governments of Earth. The humans possessed rare metals that the dragons needed for their technology. The dragons had offered fair trades, but the humans kept refusing. Every offer was met with delays, excuses, and demands for more time. Princess Lirelei had grown tired of human stubbornness. She was young and proud, and could not understand why these weak creatures dared to defy her empire. Her dragons could fly faster than human ships. Her magic could bend reality itself. Her armies could crush Earth in a matter of days. Tomorrow, a human ambassador would arrive to continue the failed negotiations. Princess Lirelei had decided that tomorrow would be different. She would not waste time with polite words and diplomatic courtesy. She would show this human exactly what kind of power he was dealing with. The Dragon Princess had spent weeks planning the perfect humiliation. She would demonstrate the full might of her empire. She would make the human understand that Earth was nothing compared to the Dragon Realm. She would break his spirit so completely that he would beg for any deal she offered. As she walked through the palace, Princess Lirelei remembered her lessons from childhood. Her tutors had taught her about human history. These creatures had only recently developed space travel. They still fought wars among themselves over resources and territory. They had no magic, no dragons, no crystal technology. What impressed Princess Lirelei most was human weakness. They lived such short lives, barely 100 years. They could not fly, could not breathe fire, could not even survive in space. Without machines, they seemed like children playing with toys they did not understand. The palace guards stood at attention as Princess Lirelei passed. They were all dragon riders chosen for their loyalty and skill. Each guard could command a war dragon in battle. Together they formed an army that had never known defeat. The sight of them should have made Princess Lirelei feel confident, but tonight she felt strangely uncertain. She entered her private chambers where Zara and Kyle were waiting. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that opened to the sky so her dragons could come and go freely. Golden perches lined the walls and soft cushions covered the floor. Everything was designed for the comfort of both princess and dragon. Zara approached and nuzzled Princess Lirelei gently. The dragon warm breath smelled like cinnamon and fire. Princess Lirelei scratched behind Zara's ears, the way she had done since they were both young. The simple gesture calmed both of them. Kyle joined them, breathing, a small puff of ice crystals that made the air sparkle. The cold felt refreshing after the warm evening. He was always the more thoughtful of the two dragons, often seeming to understand things before anyone explained them. Princess Lyrelay sat on her favorite cushion, and both dragons curled around her protectively. This was how they had always slept as a family of three. She felt safe and loved here in a way that the formal throne room could never provide. But tonight sleep would not come. Easily, Princess Lyrelay mind kept returning to tomorrow meeting. She had heard that the human ambassador was someone named Jake Miller. The report said he was ordinary looking with no special titles or achievements. She could not understand why Earth would send such a person for such important negotiations. Perhaps it was an insult. Perhaps the humans thought so little of the Dragon Empire that they sent their least important diplomat. Perhaps they were trying to show contempt by refusing to send someone worthy of her attention. The thought made Princess Lyrelay angry. Her empire deserved respect. The Dragon Realm had existed for thousands of years, before humans even learned to make fire. Her people had mastered magic and technology. While humans were still living in caves tomorrow, she would teach this Jake Miller about respect. Tomorrow she would show him the true power of dragons. Tomorrow she would make sure that Earth understood exactly who they were dealing with. Princess Lyrelay closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her dreams were filled with fire and the sound of human voices begging for mercy. The morning sun cast rainbow colors through the crystal palace as Princess Lyrelay prepared for the most important meeting of her young life. She wore her finest golden robes decorated with dragon scales that caught the light and threw it back in brilliant patterns. Her crown was made from dragon bone and precious gems, each piece telling the story of her ancient bloodline. Zara and Kyle sensed their mistress' excitement and nervousness. They had spent extra time grooming themselves until their scales shone like polished metal. Zara red hide seemed to glow with inner fire, while Kale blue scales sparkled like the deep ocean. Both dragons understood that today was special. The great throne room had been prepared according to Princess Lyrelay exact instructions. The massive crystal throne sat on a platform that rose high above the floor, giving her a commanding view of anyone who entered. Golden braziers burned with magical flames that never consumed their fuel. The air shimmered with heat and cold as both dragons prepared to demonstrate their power. Princess Lyrelay took her place on the throne with Zara and Kale positioned on marble pedestals on either side. The sight was designed to overwhelm any visitor. Dragons were creatures of legend and myth to most species. To see two magnificent specimens so close and under the command of such a young ruler would surely break the spirit of any negotiator. The palace guards announced the arrival of the human delegation. Princess Lyrelay felt her heart beat faster with anticipation. This was the moment she had planned for weeks. Soon the human ambassador would understand the futility of defying the Dragon Empire. The great doors opened, and Princess Lyrelay saw her first human in person. She had studied images and videos, but seeing one with her own eyes was different. Jake Miller was smaller than she had expected. His brown hair was cut short, and his face showed no special markings or decorations. His clothes were simple and practical, nothing like the magnificent robes worn by dragon diplomats. What surprised Princess Lyrelay most was how ordinary he seemed. She had expected someone who would at least try to look impressive. Instead, Jake Miller appeared to be exactly what the reports had said, a plain, unremarkable person who worked for his government. Jake walked forward with steady steps, showing no fear or hesitation as he approached the throne. His eyes took in the magnificent room and the two dragons, but his expression remained calm. Princess Lyrelay found his reaction puzzling. Most visitors either cowered in terror or stood in amazement at the display of power. The princess decided to begin with a demonstration of dragon might. She spoke a single word in the ancient language, and Zara responded immediately. The red dragon lifted her great head and breathed a stream of fire into the air. The flames were so hot they made the crystal walls glow, and the temperature in the room rose dramatically. Jake took a step back from the heat but otherwise showed no reaction. Princess Lyrelay felt a flash of irritation. She had expected him to fall to his knees, or at least show proper fear. Instead, he seemed to be studying Zara with what looked like curiosity rather than terror. Princess Lyrelay tried again. She spoke another command and Kale breathed a cloud of ice crystals that instantly cooled half the room. The sudden temperature change created winds that whipped around Jake, making his simple clothes flutter. The contrast between fire and ice was meant to show the complete mastery Princess Lyrelei had over opposing forces. Still, Jake remained standing. His calm reaction made Princess Lyrelei more frustrated. She had planned this moment carefully. Every detail was designed to overwhelm and intimidate. Instead, this ordinary human seemed almost bored. The princess decided to use words as weapons. She began speaking in the ancient dragon tongue, her voice echoing through the vast hall. The language itself was designed to sound threatening and powerful. Each word carried the weight of thousands of years of dragon dominance. Princess Lyrelei recited the most insulting phrases her people knew. She called humans weak, creatures who crawled in mud. She said they were so pathetic they needed machines to do what dragons did naturally. She declared that Earth was nothing more than a tiny rock that her armies could destroy without effort. As she spoke, both dragons added their voices to hers. Zara roared with flames while Kale roared with ice. The combined sound was so loud, it shook the entire palace. Servants throughout the building stopped what they were doing and listened in awe and fear. The roar could be heard for miles across the dragon realm. Other dragons answered from their distant lairs, creating a chorus that spoke of ancient power and endless dominion. The sound usually made even the bravest warriors fall to their knees and beg for mercy. When the echoes finally faded, Jake Miller was still standing. He had covered his ears briefly during the loudest part, but otherwise seemed unaffected. Princess Lyrelei stared at him in disbelief. How could anyone remain calm in the face of such overwhelming power? Jake looked directly at Princess Lyrelei and spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet and steady, completely different from the thunderous roars that had just filled the room. The contrast was striking, and somehow made his words carry more weight than all the dragon noise. He said he understood that Princess Lyrelei was angry about the trade negotiations. He acknowledged that her dragons were indeed very impressive, and that her palace was the most beautiful building he had ever seen. He even admitted that the dragon people clearly possessed technology and abilities far beyond what humans had achieved. Princess Lyrelei felt confused by his response. She had expected anger or fear or desperate attempts to appease her instead. Jake seemed to be genuinely trying to understand her perspective. He spoke to her as an equal, rather than as a subject begging for favor. Then Jake did something completely unexpected. He started talking about his family back on Earth. Specifically, he mentioned his little sister Amy, who was only 7 years old. Princess Lyrelei found herself listening, despite her frustration. She had not expected the conversation to take such a personal turn. Jake described how Amy loved to draw pictures, especially pictures of dragons. He said she would think Zara and Kale were the most amazing creatures in the universe. Amy had never seen a real dragon, but she had filled dozens of notebooks with crayon drawings of them. Princess Lyrelei felt something strange happening in her chest. The anger she had been building all morning seemed to be slipping away, replaced by an emotion she could not identify. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device that Princess Lyrelei had never seen before. It was clearly human technology, but unlike the weapons or ships she had studied, this seemed to be something personal. The device projected a hologram into the air between them. Princess Lyrelei gasped as she saw the image. It was a drawing made by a child using what humans called crayons. The picture showed a little girl with brown hair riding on the back of a purple dragon. The dragon had a big friendly smile and wore a crown made of flowers. The little girl was also smiling with her arms spread wide as if she was flying. The drawing was crude and simple, but there was something about it that made Princess Lyrelei's heart feel tight. The dragon in the picture looked nothing like the magnificent creatures that surrounded her in real life. It was more like a friendly pet than a feared war beast. But the joy in both the girl and dragon faces was unmistakable. Jake explained that Amy had drawn this picture just before he left Earth. She had made him promise to show it to the Dragon Queen and ask if dragons really liked flowers. Amy had insisted that all dragons must love beautiful things, because they were so beautiful themselves. Princess Lyrelei stared at the simple drawing. Her trained eye could see all the technical flaws in it. The proportions were wrong. The colors were unrealistic, and the anatomy made no sense. But none of that seemed to matter. The picture radiated pure happiness and love. Jake continued talking about his sister. He described how Amy had been sick for most of her short life. The doctors said she had a rare condition that affected her blood. The medicine that could help her required rare metals that were very expensive and hard to find on Earth. These were the same metals that Princess Lyrelei Empire controlled, the same resources that had caused months of failed negotiations. Jake explained that Amy was not the only sick child. Many thousands of human children suffered from similar conditions. All of them could be helped if Earth had access to the materials the Dragon Realm possessed. Princess Lyrelei felt her worldview shifting in ways she had never experienced before. She had always thought of humans as a collective enemy, a species that dared to defy her will. Now Jake was making her see them as individuals with families and loved ones just like herself. Jake told Princess Lyrelei that Amy asked about dragons every day. She wanted to know if they were friendly, what they liked to eat, and whether they would want to be friends with a little girl. Amy had made Jake promise to tell the Dragon Queen that she thought dragons were the most wonderful creatures in the universe. The princess looked at her own dragons with new eyes. Zara and Kale were watching Jake with expressions she had never seen before. Both creatures seemed genuinely interested in what he was saying. Dragons were excellent judges of character, and they clearly sensed something worthy in this quiet human. Jake explained that he had not come to the Dragon Realm to threaten or bargain. He had come hoping to find compassion in beings who were clearly capable of great love. Anyone who could earn the loyalty and affection of dragons like Zara and Kale must have goodness in their hearts. Princess Lyrelei felt tears forming in her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her this way before. Every other diplomat had tried to impress her with their own power, or threatened her. With consequences, Jake was simply asking for help from one being who loved another. The princess thought about her own childhood and how much Zara and Kale meant to her. She could not imagine life without them. They were not just pets or weapons. They were family. The bond between them was built on love and trust that had grown stronger every day. Jake seemed to understand this without being told. He spoke about Amy the same way Princess Lyrelei thought about her dragons, with complete devotion and willingness to sacrifice anything for their well-being. Jake had traveled across the galaxy, not for his government or his species, but for one little girl who drew pictures of friendly dragons. Princess Lyrelei realized that she had been completely wrong about humans. She had thought they were weak because they lacked magic and dragons, but Jake was showing her a different kind of strength. The strength to love someone more than yourself. The strength to keep hope alive, even when facing impossible odds. The princess looked again at Amy drawing and saw something she had missed before. In the corner of the picture, the little girl had written words in crayon. Princess Lyrelei could read human languages, but these words were written in a shaky handwriting. The message said, "For the Dragon Queen. From your friend, Amy." There was also a small drawing of a heart with wings. The simple gesture of friendship from someone who had never met her touched Princess Lyrelei more deeply than all the formal treaties and diplomatic ceremonies she had ever experienced. Jake noticed where she was looking and smiled for the first time since entering the throne room. He explained that Amy had insisted on adding that message. She believed that anyone who lived with dragons must be lonely sometimes and could use a friend. Amy wanted the Dragon Queen to know that there was at least one human who thought she was wonderful. Princess Lyrelei felt her heart breaking and healing at the same time. All her life she had been taught that power came from strength and fear. She had believed that ruling meant making others submit to her will. But Amy drawing was showing her a completely different kind of power. The power of friendship offered, freely without expecting anything in return. The power of a child love that saw only good in creatures she had never met. The power of hope that persisted even in the face of sickness and pain. Princess Lyrelei looked at Jake with new respect. This ordinary man had accomplished something that armies and threats had failed to do. He had changed her mind not through force or cleverness, but through simple honesty and love. The princess realized that she was facing the most important decision of her life. She could continue down the path of anger and dominance, or she could choose something completely different. She could choose to be the kind of being that a 7-year-old girl would want to be friends with. Zara and Kale seemed to sense the change in their mistress. Both dragons approached the throne and nuzzled Princess Lyralee gently. Their warm breath and soft touches reminded her of all the love she had received throughout her life. Love that had been freely given without conditions or demands. Princess Lyralee made her choice. Princess Lyralee stood from her crystal throne and walked down the steps toward Jake. The action shocked everyone in the throne room, including her own guards. Dragon royalty never descended to meet visitors. It was a sign of respect that had not been given to anyone in living memory. As she approached Jake, the princess felt nervous in a way she had never experienced before. All her life people had bowed to her, feared her, or tried to please her. Now, she was choosing to meet someone as an equal, and she was not sure how to do it properly. Jake watched her approach with the same calm expression he had worn since entering the palace. He did not seem impressed by her gesture, but he also did not seem to take it for granted. Princess Lyralee appreciated that he understood the significance without making a big show of it. When she reached Jake, Princess Lyralee spoke in the human language for the first time. Her voice was softer than it had been during her angry speech earlier. She told Jake that she wanted to hear more about Amy and about the children who needed help. Jake seemed surprised but pleased by her interest. He explained that Amy's condition was called something complicated in medical terms, but the simple truth was that her body could not make healthy blood. The rare metals could be used to build machines that would fix this problem, Princess. Lyralee asked questions that she had never thought to ask before. She wanted to know how many children were affected, how long they had been sick, and what their lives were like. Jake answered every question with patience and detail. The princess learned that there were thousands of sick children across Earth. Some were babies who had never known a day without pain. Others were older like Amy, who tried to stay cheerful despite their illness. All of them could be helped if the right technology was available. Jake showed Princess Lyralee more pictures that Amy had drawn. There were dragons playing with children, dragons helping to build hospitals, and dragons sharing meals with human families. Each picture showed the same theme: dragons and humans working together as friends. Princess Lyralee found herself smiling at the innocent drawings. Amy had imagined a world where dragons and humans lived in harmony, where powerful creatures used their abilities to help rather than to threaten. It was a beautiful vision that the princess had never considered. Jake explained that Amy was not unusual among human children. Most of them were fascinated by dragons and dreamed of meeting them someday. They saw dragons as symbols of magic and wonder, rather than as fearsome enemies. Human children wrote stories, drew pictures, and played games about befriending dragons. This revelation amazed Princess Lyralee. She had always assumed that humans feared dragons the way prey fears predators. Instead, Jake was telling her that human children actually loved dragons and wished they could be friends. The misunderstanding seemed tragic now. Princess Lyralee thought about her own childhood and how isolated she had been. Other dragon children were taught to see her as superior because of her royal blood. Adult dragons treated her with formal respect rather than genuine affection. Only Zara and Kale had ever loved her simply for who she was. The idea that thousands of human children might want to be her friend was both wonderful and heartbreaking. Princess Lyralee realized how lonely she had been without even knowing it, or had convinced herself that fear and respect were enough. But Amy's drawing showed her what she had been missing. Jake seemed to understand her thoughts without her having to explain. He told Princess Lyralee that Amy often said she wished she could have a dragon friend to play with, someone who would understand what it was like to be different from everyone else, someone who would not treat her like she was fragile because of her illness. Princess Lyralee felt a deep connection to this little girl she had never met. Amy was also young and sick and probably lonely like herself. The princess had power that Amy lacked, but Amy had something Princess Lyralee had never experienced: the pure love of family and friends who cared about her happiness. The princess made a decision that surprised even herself. She told Jake that she wanted to help, not just with the trade negotiations but personally. She wanted to do something special for Amy and for all the sick children on Earth. Jake looked genuinely moved by her offer. He said that any help would be greatly appreciated, but he did not want Princess Lyrelei to feel obligated. The princess assured him that this was her choice. She wanted to be the kind of being that Amy had drawn in her pictures, someone who used power to help rather than to harm Princess Lyrelei, called for her chief advisor a wise old dragon who had served the royal family for centuries. The advisor was shocked when the princess announced that she was changing the empire policy toward Earth. Not only would they provide the needed materials, but they would do so as a gift rather than a trade. The advisor protested that this would set a dangerous precedent. Other species might expect similar generosity. Princess Lyrelei listened to his concerns, but her mind was made up. She explained that sometimes being strong meant being generous rather than demanding. Jake tried to protest that Earth could pay for the materials, but Princess Lyrelei would not hear of it. She said that Amy's friendship was worth more than any payment. Besides, the Dragon Empire had more rare metals than they could use in 1,000 years. The princess then announced something that shocked everyone even more. She said she wanted to visit Earth, personally to meet Amy and the other sick children. No dragon ruler had ever left their home realm for such a purpose. The advisor looked like he might faint from the unprecedented nature of the request. Princess Lyrelei explained that she had lived her entire life in the Crystal Palace surrounded by luxury and power, but she had never really understood what life was like for others. She wanted to see how humans lived and to learn from their ways. Jake was honored by her request, but warned that Earth was very different from the Dragon Realm. There were no crystal palaces or magical conveniences. Humans lived much simpler lives. Princess Lyrelei said that was exactly what she wanted to experience. The princess announced that Zara and Kale would accompany her on the journey. Both dragons seemed excited by the prospect of adventure. They had never left their home either, and were curious about the worlds beyond their realm. Jake asked if Princess Lyrelei was certain about her decision. Visiting Earth would mean giving up her comfortable life temporarily to live among beings she had once considered enemies. The princess smiled and said that Amy had taught her something important through her drawings. True friends were not enemies. They were family waiting to be discovered. The journey to Earth took 3 days using the fastest dragon ships. Princess Lyrelei had never traveled so far from home before. Every star system they passed showed her new wonders and made her realize how small her palace was compared to the vast universe. Zara and Kale adapted quickly to space travel. Their natural magic protected them from the cold and vacuum, while the ship provided air and gravity. Both dragons spent hours looking out the viewing ports at the strange new sights. Princess Lyrelei found their excitement infectious. Jake used the travel time to teach Princess Lyrelei about human culture. He showed her videos of Earth cities, explained how human families lived, and prepared her for what to expect. The princess was amazed by how different human society was from her own. When they finally reached Earth, Princess Lyrelei was shocked by how blue and green the planet looked from space. The Dragon Realm was beautiful, but it was all crystal and stone. Earth was alive in a way she had never imagined possible. The ship landed at a small medical facility rather than a government building. Jake had arranged for Princess Lyrelei to meet Amy privately before any official ceremonies. The princess felt more nervous about meeting one little girl than she had about commanding entire armies. Amy was waiting in a garden behind the hospital. She was smaller than Princess Lyrelei had expected, with pale skin that showed her illness, but bright eyes that sparkled with excitement. When she saw the dragons, Amy let out a squeal of pure joy that made everyone smile. Zara and Kale approached Amy carefully, sensing her fragility, but also her fearless enthusiasm. Amy reached out to touch Zara's scales and gasped at how warm they were. She told Zara that she was even more beautiful than in her dreams. Princess Lyrelei knelt down to Amy level and introduced herself. The little girl looked at her with wonder and said she looked exactly like a real princess. Amy then did something that surprised everyone. She hugged Princess Lyrelei tightly and whispered, "Thank you for coming to visit." The simple gesture of affection broke down the last of Princess Lyrelei barriers. She hugged Amy back, feeling protective and loving in a way she had never experienced before. This was what Jake had been trying to tell her about humans, their capacity for instant, genuine connection. Amy showed Princess Lyreley around the hospital, introducing her to other sick children. Each child reacted to the dragons with pure delight rather than fear. They asked questions, petted the dragons, and shared their own drawings and stories. Princess Lyreley was amazed by the children, courage and optimism. Despite their illnesses, they were cheerful and kind to each other. They shared toys, comforted friends, and never complained about their situation. The princess realized these children were braver than most of her warriors. The medical staff explained how the rare metals would be used to build new treatment machines. Princess Lyreley listened carefully and asked detailed questions. She wanted to understand exactly how her gift would help and make sure it was used properly. Over the following days, Princess Lyreley visited schools, hospitals, and homes across Earth. She met families who welcomed her warmly despite having every reason to fear dragons. She saw human communities working together to solve problems and care for each other. What impressed her most was how humans treated those who were different or vulnerable. Instead of abandoning the weak, they built special schools for disabled children, created programs to feed hungry families, and developed medicine to cure diseases. Princess Lyreley realized that humans had something her empire lacked. They had learned to measure strength not by power over others, but by willingness to help those in need. Human civilization was built on cooperation and compassion rather than dominance and fear. The princess made another decision that shocked her advisors. She announced that the Dragon Realm would open permanent embassies on Earth, not for trade or military purposes, but for cultural exchange. She wanted young dragons to learn human values, and young humans to experience dragon magic. Amy was the first human child invited to visit the Dragon Realm. When she arrived at the Crystal Palace, she was not intimidated by its grandeur. Instead, she immediately started planning how to make it more colorful and fun. She suggested adding gardens, playgrounds, and art studios. Princess Lyreley found herself implementing Amy's suggestions and discovering that the palace became a happier place when it was designed for joy rather than intimidation. Other dragons began visiting from across the realm, curious about the changes they were hearing about. The alliance between dragons and humans grew stronger with each passing month. They shared technology, medicine, and knowledge, but more importantly, they shared friendship. Both species learned that differences in appearance and ability mattered less than shared values. Amy recovered completely, thanks to the new medical equipment. Her first act after being declared healthy was to paint a mural on the hospital wall showing dragons and humans playing together. The image became a symbol of hope for other sick children. Princess Lyreley kept a copy of Amy's original drawing in her throne room, but now it was surrounded by hundreds of other pictures from human children around Earth. Each drawing showed dragons and humans as friends, and Princess Lyreley treasured everyone. Years later, Princess Lyreley would look back on her meeting with Jake as the most important day of her life. She had planned to humiliate a human ambassador, and instead had discovered the true meaning of strength. Jake had won the greatest victory possible without speaking a single harsh word. The quiet human had taught a proud dragon princess that real power came from lifting others up, rather than putting them down. He had shown her that love was stronger than fear, and friendship was more valuable than dominance. Amy grew up to become a doctor specializing in treating the same conditions she had suffered from. She divided her time between Earth and the Dragon Realm, using both human medicine and dragon magic to heal sick children from across the galaxy. Princess Lyreley never forgot the lesson that a 7-year-old girl had taught her through crayon drawings. True leadership meant using your power to protect those who could not protect themselves. The greatest victory was not defeating enemies, but turning them into family. The Dragon Empire became known throughout the galaxy not for its fearsome armies, but for its compassion and generosity. Other species sought alliance not because they feared dragon power, but because they admired dragon kindness. And in a small garden behind a human hospital, a mural still showed dragons and children playing together under a sky full of stars, reminding everyone who saw it that friendship could bridge any gap and love could overcome any difference. Princess Lyreley had learned that sometimes the smallest voice could teach the greatest lesson, and the gentlest heart could change the entire universe.